to Morning Joe. It is Wednesday, February 21st, and we have a lot to get to this morning, including former President Trump continuing to compare his legal woes to the persecution of Alexei Navalny.
It's beyond grotesque.
While still...
A guy who has been accused by a judge of rape, a guy who has been accused or been found liable for sexual assault by a jury.
Massive fraud.
Massive fraud. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
91 criminal counts.
Creditors. And the thing is, I just got to say really quickly, the thing is, nobody is questioning whether Donald Trump stole papers from the White House, whether he stole nuclear secrets, whether he
had sex with a porn star and paid her off. No one's questioning that he
illegally right before an election. Nobody's even questioning that. And that guy is comparing himself to Alexei Navalny. It's grotesque.
And he continues to refuse to criticize Vladimir Putin on top of all of that.
Not a surprise at all.
His latest comments, just as the Biden White House prepares new major sanctions against the Kremlin following Navalny's death. Plus, we're getting new details about the former FBI informant accused of lying about Hunter and Joe Biden's dealings in Ukraine. We'll tell you where U.S. prosecutors say he got his dirt on the Bidens and his new lies that could impact the 2024 elections. NBC's Tom Winter is standing by with new reporting.
You'll be shocked, but you won't be surprised.
Right. I think that's part of the plan, is just to overrun people with bad information. Also ahead, Nikki Haley won't kiss the ring, and she's not dropping out of the race. We'll play for you what she had to say about Donald Trump yesterday in South Carolina. Fair to say, she is not kicking sideways anymore.
No, she's not.
She's staying in it. I think it's smart, actually.
It really is smart. And really, we're going to be talking a good bit about what's been happening in Russia, what's been happening, more importantly, in the United States. Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, defending a man who continues kidnapping, and that's what it really is. It's not arresting. Continues to kidnap Americans. Here's a picture of yet another American they have kidnapped and now are throwing in jail, just like they did Navalny. You see Evan Gershkovich at a hearing on Tuesday, once again denied. Again, it's straight out Clemens. It's straight out kidnapping. They're thugs. Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, keeps defending this tyrant who killed Navalny, this tyrant who invaded Georgia in 2008, this tyrant who invaded Crimea in 2014, this tyrant who invaded Ukraine a couple of years ago, this tyrant that has continued to kill any political opponents or journalists or even people on foreign soil, trying to kill people on foreign soil who he considers his rivals. This is who Donald Trump and Mike Johnson continue to defend. It's sickening, and I will circle back to what Mika says. It's un-American.
Un-American, and they're members of the Senate, by the way, have now taken to praising Vladimir Putin as well. And the longer we go without this aid package getting through the Congress, the happier Vladimir Putin is. It's just real simple. They're taking back towns in eastern Ukraine they didn't think they'd be able to take back because Ukraine is running out of ammunition. And last night, Joe, at that town hall, I know we're going to play some more of it in a little bit, Donald Trump talking on Fox News would not condemn Vladimir Putin, which raises the question, we can ask it every day, what is going on there? This should be really easy. He very briefly said Alexei Navalny was brave, and then pivoted to framing himself as the Alexei Navalny of America, which he has exactly backwards. Navalny was a critic of Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump is the opposite of that.
And again, Willie, we go back to 2015 on this show. And we thought at the time it was so bizarre. And it was the first time.
It was the
first time that we had heard and other people had heard Donald Trump so fearful of crossing Vladimir Putin, refusing to say that it was wrong for him to kill political opponents, to kill journalists, to kill any rivals. And he says, well, yeah, America does it too. That sort of lie that sort of lie, which Donald Trump, you used to have Republicans apologize for Donald Trump and then pass tough sanctions against Vladimir Putin. Now, this old, tired, aging reality TV host has not only taken over the party, but has actually completely destroyed, completely obliterated any trace of Ronald Reagan's Republican Party that stood for freedom, that stood for fighting Russian tyranny, that stood for the liberation of millions of souls in Eastern Europe and Central Europe. Now, Donald Trump, shockingly, and Ronald Reagan's old party now teaming up in an alliance with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and we are learning more details, speaking of Russia, Joe, about Russian links to the FBI informant charged with lying to the agency about President Joe Biden and his son Hunter during the 2020 presidential campaign. At a detention hearing in federal court in Las Vegas yesterday, prosecutors revealed in a filing that some of the false information Alexander Smirnov fed to the FBI, including a story about Hunter Biden, came from officials associated with Russian intelligence. What's more, prosecutors allege the 43-year-old is, quote, actively peddling new lies that could impact U.S. elections after meeting with Russian intelligence officials in November. Despite those revelations, the judge found the government failed to make its case that Smirnov should be detained until trial and ordered him released under conditions that include GPS monitoring. Smirnov has been a key source for congressional Republicans and their impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Let's bring in NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter. Also with us, the host of Way Too Early, White House bureau chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, and U.S. special correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay. Good morning to you all. Tom, I'll start with you. You've been digging into this new filing that we learned from the FBI that this guy, Alexander Smirnov, who now is charged with lying to the FBI, he, of course, had been the cornerstone, the star witness for this impeachment investigation into Joe Biden. Turns out he made it all up. But now there's a new twist to the story. What more do we know about his connections to Russia?
Right. Well, there's a whole lot of new information here, and I think it's really important to pay attention to the timeline. Something Alexander Smirnov clearly did not do, and that's a big reason why he's jammed up here. Yeah, he appeared in court late yesterday. Our colleague Sarah Fitzpatrick was there wearing a yellow jumpsuit, said detainee on the back, and he was there with some members of his family who were speaking in Russian. I think when you look at this in the totality of what was in the detention memo, which was extraordinary. I mean, prosecutors use these to really put, the hammer down and show a little bit about what type of evidence they're going to bring forward. When you look at the filing yesterday, they went really deep in unclassifying information that was unclassified on Valentine's Day when Smirnov was arrested, deep into his background, that he was a 10-year plus source for the FBI, that he had a handler that he talked to, quote, nearly every day, which is a lot, by the way, for somebody who's a confidential human source. Somebody who had been run out of the Seattle field office, assigned to an agent who works in the criminal squad there. And the key line from this, and we'll show a portion of the document that was filed yesterday, is that it says during his custodial interview on February 14th, so this is an interview that occurs after Smirnov is in handcuffs, he admitted that officials associated with Russian intelligence were involved in passing a story about business person one who we've publicly identified is Hunter Biden. So he told the FBI after he's in handcuffs, yes, I did this, and that it came from individuals associated with Russian intelligence. There's additional information that is that's contained in this document. You read some of the quotes, Willie, but it shows that overall he lied about a series of meetings in 2015 and 2016, phone calls in 2016 and 2017, and he didn't pay attention to what he already told the FBI. And so there's information that they write up in a report of 10, it's called the 1023 report, and that's just a summary of the conversation that they had with the guy. There's nothing in there that says whether or not they determined what he said was true or it made sense. But the 1023 is an interesting part of this because it speaks to the congressional component. If you remember, there was a big fight in Congress about whether or not a 1023 from a confidential human source about the Bidens should be released from the FBI. That happens in the spring of last year. This is ongoing, and then at some point, it's released. Then he speaks with the FBI again on multiple occasions. And as you said, there's further discussions about, well, this is what the Bidens were up to. There was even information about what Hunter Biden was up to at a hotel in Ukraine. Problem with that, prosecutors say Hunter Biden's never been there. So it raises questions as to whether or not the Russians took a look at the fact that information they're feeding this guy can go direct to Congress. And they're smart enough to realize, hey, you know what? We don't even need to try to push this through the FBI. We can just tell this guy whatever. Information's going to go in a report, and then it might just find its way to Congress. And there's no legal vetting here. There's nothing here that says whether or not what this guy said was true or not.
And a reminder to our viewers, this all stems from the investigation from Special Counsel David Weiss, a Trump-appointed prosecutor. So someone not particularly friendly to the Bidens. So let's take this a step further. Is the FBI suggesting in this filing in some way what it appears to be, which is that the Russian government, Russian intelligence, feeding this source that they know has a direct line to the FBI bad information to damage the Bidens as we enter an election year?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's where yesterday's detention memo really went a step further than the indictment. I mean, they said that he was meeting with Russian officials, and people are looking through that and says, well, it sure seems like that could be code for Russian intelligence officials. But they flat out said, they didn't name those individuals, but they put in a lot of detail about their positions within the Russian intelligence community. He's meeting with them, and then he says, and they write in their memo that it was after he was arrested that he admitted that these individuals who are associated with Russian intelligence were involved in passing a business story on business person one, who's Hunter Biden. So I think that's a key part of this. Another thing that I would say is that this individual, according to some of the things that are in the indictment, had a background or at least had associates within Russian organized crime. We think in this country of the mobs on one side and the governments on the other. And of course, we've seen some bad instances where there's been some crossover. But to understand Russia is to understand that Russian organized crime is completely interwoven with the way that their system works. From the intelligence side of things, to the business side of things, to the politics side of things. They're a huge part of the oil that greases the machine of Vladimir Putin and the current Russian state. And so for this person to have those, I'd be very curious to know more about what he knows about Russian organized crime and how that could have been involved in all of this.
Katty Kay, I was talking to a high-level official who attended the Munich Security Conference, and the reporting back to me was that foreign leaders are looking at the United States with fear and trepidation as they watch Trump and Russian interference really infiltrate our politics and Russian crime, infiltrating our legal system to the point where they're extremely worried. And
wasn't the phrase freaked out?
Freaked out is the phrase, but also why don't Americans see what they see so clearly?
I think freaked out might be a little mild, actually, about how many are feeling. And just to pick up on, Tom's reporting, there's an extraordinary report, and I'd recommend people take a quick look at it. It's paraphrased in The Economist this week from the Royal United Services Institute in London, showing just how much more effective Russian spying has become, even in the last few months, gearing up for the 2024 election. And the kinds of things that they're doing are exactly what Tom's reporting about. But, but the threat to American democracy, if we can really have Russian intelligence services feeding unfiltered any kind of information they want to willing recipients on Capitol Hill in the Republican Party is extraordinary. I mean, just a few weeks ago, there was Jim Jordan saying that Smirnov was what did he call him? The most corroborating evidence they had in their impeachment case against Hunter Biden. And yet, where's the kind of backlash from the Republicans now after this indictment saying, oh, actually, you know what, we don't really have a case because this guy is a Russian stooge. So we're not hearing any of that, particularly not from James Comer. So Americans have to wise up to what the Russians are doing. They've got good. I mean, it's easy to say, well, they failed over Kyiv. They failed on a whole bunch of other things. They didn't do well at the beginning of the war in Ukraine. But actually, they're learning. They've learned militarily, and they've certainly learned on the intelligence side. And Americans need to be very aware of exactly this kind of misinformation. And Tom, I mean, what does this do now then to the Republicans? That's what I wonder. Does James Comer do a volte face and say, well, actually, you know what, maybe this information isn't so good after all?
Well, if I was able to know exactly what Congress would do, I don't know if I would be sitting here, and it might be on a yacht somewhere predicting congressional investigations. I do think it's important for people to know that this has been going on for a long time with this person. Specifically, it was spoken about by then Attorney General Bill Barr back in 2020 when they set up a kind of an intake center for what he said was information coming in from Ukraine that might be related to the Bidens. He said that the information had to be, quote, carefully scrutinized. There are a lot of agendas in Ukraine. There are a lot of cross currents, and we can't take anything received from Ukraine at face value. He noted this is true for all information that comes to the department, referring to the Department of Justice, relating to Ukraine, including anything that Mr. Giuliani might provide, because, of course, at that time, Giuliani was trying to put forward information he says he received relevant to the Bidens from that part of the world. So I think it's something that this case will be something that we'll closely watch.
All right, NBC News Investigations correspondent Tom Wonder, thank you so much. It's just shocking. I mean, here we see what Russia's doing to Ukraine, the invasion of a free country, of a sovereign country continues. You go to the front page of the Wall Street Journal, you see Americans kidnapped, one masked, Evan staring from his jail cell into the courtroom, trying to be freed. A journalist for the Wall Street Journal, arrested for reporting on the war. You have, and it's just shocking. You have Russian security services deciding, hey, we can just send unfiltered crap straight to Congress. And we don't have to worry about it being filtered by intel services, as we heard the report earlier. It's just shocking. And why is that? It's because Republicans hate Joe Biden more than they fear Vladimir Putin. It is really sick. It's really sick, and Trump once again, and Republicans being played once again by Vladimir Putin. Mickey, thank you for this bell.
How many times why? What are you doing?
Every time a bell rings,
Yeah.
Putin has Donald Trump on a string.
Oh, well, now hold on a second. That will do 4 hours of hitting that bell.
You saw that, of course, Jonathan Lemire in it. It's a Wonderful Life. Juju said that at the end to Jimmy Stewart, made us all cry. I mean, it was true then. Is that what she said?
I don't want to hear that for 4 hours.
Is that what she said? Something like that every time a bell rings.
It was a sort of an unexpected twist at the end of an otherwise feeling.
It was strange.
Unexpected to say the
Putin has
least.
Republicans on a string, and you're like, they did that in like 1946, 1947, and I'm sure they're thinking, Putin, who's this Putin guy?
Yeah, we're
Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, think about though, I gotta say seriously now, think about the fact that Vladimir Putin understands that Republicans are so stupid now in the House, even with the help of their legal counsel, Arnold the Pig from Green Acres, that Republicans are so stupid in the House, they can feed Russian disinformation straight into the veins of the United States Congress, straight in, because they hate them so much. And then you have idiots running around talking about how they've got this information that's going to bring down Joe Biden. Like, they depended on Russian disinformation. They depended on an international fugitive illegally selling Iranian oil to communist China, illegally selling arms, and all of this to try to take down Joe Biden, and none of it's hitting, and everything, and we've been saying this for months, keeps making them look worse.
Yeah, these Republicans and Donald Trump want to win more than they care about their country. That's what it seems like. We can trace it back to 2015, 2016, Trump's appearance on the show praising Putin, his call, Russia, are you listening, begging them to hack into Hillary Clinton's emails. It was that very day that WikiLeaks started posting them. We know his performance as president, Helsinki included, and even in the last 10 days, he's urged Russia to invade NATO NATO countries and compared himself to Alexei Navalny. But it's also Republicans doing his bidding. Yes, there are still some good Republicans in Congress, particularly in the Senate, who stand up to Putin, who are still cold warriors in a way, who follow the tradition of a Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and their approach to Russia, who are trying to get a funding package for Ukraine through. But there are just enough, handful in the Senate and more in the House, who are these useful idiots who are willing to do Putin's bidding, who will take anything from an asset with Russian ties to Russian officials. They'll take this unfiltered stuff and say, hey, let's make a case out of it. Let's bring down the Bidens. They don't care how they win. They just want to win. They'll do every dirty trick, including what used to be so sacrosanct in this country. You do not accept aid from foreign countries. You do not let them meddle in our elections. And I think that it's pretty clear that there are some Republicans who hope that they'll be outside at help again, trying to beat Joe Biden from Russia and elsewhere. They're banking on that come November.
Coming up, we'll go live to South Carolina, where Nikki Haley is vowing to stay in the race no matter what happens in Saturday's primary. That conversation just ahead on Morning Joe.
You know, I'm not no politician. I'm not no war analyst. I'm a man of peace, pertaining to Bible prophecy. But if it was me, I would look at the statistics, which I'm looking at right here. And it says here, as of 2021, U.S. Census Bureau reports more than 650,000 Russians born people in the U.S., which is about 0.2% of a total population. American estimated Russians in America, approximately 2.9 million people. 2.9. And then I went on, I looked at, according to U.S., there are 650,000, hang on. New York City is the home of the largest Russian population. What state has the highest Russian population? New York. Why are there so many Russians in Washington State? Because of religion, political reasons, and sociomatic reasons. And it goes on in here, and it gets to talking about, I think it was North Dakota and 2 or 3 other places that has a great deal of Russians that's living in it. And then, of course, you got European Russians, and on and on. But what I was trying to say a while ago is this. If you're going to go to kidnapping people and falsely accusing them, especially if they are Americans. Now, I don't know what or why Eric Snowden thought that he was going to be doing by accomplishing by seeking Russia for safe haven, but it's very possible. Immigration laws permitted Soviet immigrations. It's very possible that they could take him and try to use him as some sort of prying tool. The fact of the matter is, if I was the President of the United States, I would be tempting of making it a public awareness, kind of like what happened during Obama's administration, whenever I think it was 8 or 10 or something like that, Russian diplomats was ordered out of the United States, and they was ordered immediately out of the United States whenever that occurred. I would be tempting to actually go and arrest people that was associated with the Russian government that I felt like that could actually be a spy, and line them up and put them on TV. Because as the old saying goes, two can play this game in regards towards us basically being held blackmailed in people acting this way, which is supposed to be against all universal global alliances and diplomatic rules. So what's going on right now is absolutely a far cry. And as far as what they was talking about earlier, whenever this first come on, pertaining to talking about Trump trying to compare himself with the individual that recently died, I think her remarks was the individual was going up against Russia and turning them in, or no, she said Russia turned this individual into a sacrifice, and the difference is that Trump was trying to use his vice president, Pence, towards using him as a sacrifice, which actually is true. Actually is true if you get to looking at the facts.
On suspicion of treason, which is punishable by up to 20 years in prison.
It's another kidnapping. Another kidnapping by Vladimir Putin of an American.
Russian officials say Kesnia Karolina, a Los Angeles resident with dual Russian-American citizenship, was detained for raising funds, $51.80 to be specific, to support Ukraine in its defense against Russia. Russia says Karolina spent the money on medicine, equipment, weapons, and ammunition to help Ukraine. The White House said it was working to secure consular access, but it has not yet been granted. We will continue to follow that story. It comes, of course, as a Russian court has decided to keep Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich in custody. Gershkovich was arrested on espionage charges last March while on a reporting trip there. He and the Journal have denied the allegations, and the U.S. government has declared him to be wrongfully detained. Yesterday, the Moscow City Court rejected an appeal filed by his lawyers to release Gershkovich from his pretrial detention. Now the reporter will remain behind bars until the end of March. The State Department says while it is disappointed in the ruling, it is not surprised by the outcome.
Well, and Paul Whelan still sits in a Russian gulag, his family waiting for him to be returned home.
And with that as a backdrop, Donald Trump continues to make the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny about himself.
But not about the man who killed him. Not about Vladimir Putin. He refuses still to condemn Vladimir Putin.
Who poisoned him once, and it didn't work. And finally, he killed him. In a recorded town hall that aired on Fox News last night, Trump was asked about the money he now owes after being found liable for massive fraud in New York State. And he said that was a, quote, form of Navalny. Trump did call the opposition leader, quote, very brave while answering a separate question, but again failed to condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin, who most believe to be behind Navalny's death. Take a look.
Even if you appeal, you got to put up escrow money. That's it's a lot of
It is a form of Navalny. It is a form of communism or fascism. Navalny is a very sad situation, and he's very brave. He was a very brave guy. It's a horrible thing, but it's happening in our country too. We are turning into a communist country in many ways, and if you look at it, I'm the leading candidate. I get indicted. I never heard of being indicted before.
It's such a lie.
That's disgusting.
It's such a lie on every single level. A form of Navalny, communism, a guy that lies to banks, a guy that lies to creditors, a guy that lies to everybody about his property holdings. Listen, that would get any of us thrown in jail. That would get you thrown in jail if you did that. Or that would get you, if not thrown in jail, that would get you fined. And so he's been doing this for decades. People in Manhattan have been saying he's been doing this for decades. And so finally, if there is a form of sort of Putinism in America, which of course it's so funny, he didn't say Putinism, he didn't bring up Vladimir Putin. But I think the most un-American thing that's happened to Donald Trump through the decades is he always gets away with it. He is Rollo Tomasi. If you saw LA Confidential, he's the guy that always gets away with it. And we don't know, maybe he's going to get away with it again. Maybe we know that's what this run for the presidency is. We said it in 2019. I said it in 2019. I said if Donald Trump loses, he's going to run again. And he's going to run again if for no other reason to avoid all of the criminal actions that are going to be coming against him. The ones that we saw even before January 6th. Communism. I wonder, are the people in that crowd, and I think we have to start asking this of our fellow Americans, are the people in that crowd really stupid enough to believe that if justice finally comes to one shyster, that somehow condemns America and makes it a, quote, communist nation, when actually American capitalism is stronger today than ever before? Let me just say that again.
I don't want to believe that.
American capitalism is stronger than ever before. We are crushing Chinese communism. I know they're really stupid people in Congress. They go, these communists. They throw that word around having absolutely no idea what that means, no idea what Marxism means. They just like anybody they're opposed to is either a pedophile or a Marxist. That shows you, again, how bankrupt intellectually, how bankrupt philosophically, how bankrupt spiritually the Republican Party is. They attack our military. They say it's weak. They say it's pathetic. When our men and women in uniform are stronger now, relative to the rest of the world, than any time since the end of World War II. And American capitalism blowing away not only our allies, but also all of our rivals. I just got to keep saying it. Donald Trump loves Russia so much he should move there. If you move there, he'd hate it. Tucker Carlson, why don't you move there? If you love Russia, if it's so great, if it's a land of paradise, I mean, these are the lies. This is the BS we used to hear from Soviet leaders coming to the United States and talking on Larry King about what a worker's paradise. Go to the worker's paradise. Has a lower GDP than the state of Texas. California, this place that everybody says is the worst place. Oh, it's so horrible. California, communist state. California has the fourth largest GDP in the world. In the world. In the world. In the world. I want to bring an island in a second, but I want to go to Caddy K. Caddy, when you have these idiot Republicans talking about how weak America's military is, how weak America's economy is, how Americans are communists, I think of my limited time going across the world, talking to leaders in the Middle East, talking to the leaders in Europe, talking to leaders around the world. I will tell you, over the past several years, I've not had one say, you know what the problem is with America? You all are too weak. No, what they say is, you're trouncing us economically, you're trouncing us militarily, and we don't appreciate it. They say it in different words, sometimes much harsher. I can't even repeat what one leader of a major European country said to me about what the United States was doing to them, but it was colorful. And it was about our strong economy. We're rolling over the rest of the world, and instead of celebrating America's strength, Republicans are attacking it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I have had this conversation many times, Joe. Look at the state of the U.S. economy at the moment compared to all other industrialized economies in the world. It's not just the state of communist California that's doing so well. It is the United States writ large. Growth is higher, inflation is lower, unemployment is lower. This, you know, in global terms, this is a rocket ship. You read it, I read it too. Jared Baker's article about the state of Russia and the state of the United States, saying how absurd it is to compare Russia to the United States at the moment. He makes a very funny comment at the beginning in a kind of spoof saying, yeah, that's because there are so many immigrants queuing up to get into Russia at the moment. At least they don't have an immigration problem because millions of people are not trying to get there. Where do people want to send their kids to university? It's here in the United States. Where do people want to come into this country to work? It's here in the United States. None of that is true of Russia. I mean, Joe Biden for, you may not like Joe Biden if you're a Republican. You may not like the expansion of government. You may not like the CHIPS Act. You may not like the Inflation Reduction Act. You may not like the spending that has gone on during this administration. If you are a fiscal conservative, you may have concerns about it. But to say that, Joe Biden locks up his political enemies, or if you're a journalist, you get thrown into jail if you report critical things of this administration, or that the Justice Department is warped one way or the other, it's ridiculous. I mean, there is clearly no comparison.
Coming up, as Joe mentioned, John Hellman is standing by. He will weigh in on all of this straight ahead on Morning Joe.
The fact of the matter is, the administration that's in power right now would not have to be jumping through hula hoops and turning cartwheels the way that it is if the prior administrations would have done what they were supposed to have done in recognizing global warming, in recognizing how serious that this is pertaining to international affairs. Whenever my dad was in World War II, he told me some very graphic, bone-chilling stories about how men would get captured, and they would torture these men to try to get these men to talk. And let's say the enemy wanted to know where there was a certain ship at. Of course, today we're dealing with different circumstances because of radar and etc. But it's still on the same level. They would torture that individual to death if that individual did not talk about where a certain boat was that, let's say, had 500 men on it. And the reason why is because our men over here was trained that one life is less sacrificial than 500. Based upon the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's what made America strong. It wasn't just the atom bomb that made America strong. It was our fortitude. It was our disposition that we took towards protecting ourselves. And I told the President of the United States, presently, that's there right now, Biden, within the first 72 hours, he should have implemented some sort of harsh measures against Putin, because once more, he is not dealing with goat herders. He is dealing with a group of people that, if you'll study their history going all the way back to the Vikings and beyond, these people are rootless. And we want to look at, let's say, Kim Jong over in North Korea, towards him being one of the ones that's wanting to rule the world in a demonic way. Well, he's kind of the one on the mantle that everybody's been looking at. The whole time, the ones that should have been looking at was the ones that wasn't on the mantle, pertaining to how that, I think it was Brezhnev that said, we will take the American people over and never fire a shot. And you don't think that firing off a nuclear missile up above our continental United States, that would affect all our satellite and communications? Sure it would. And they know that. That would be like trying to send a missile over into Yellowstone and causing a volcano eruption. That would be like blowing up the southern tip of one of the Grand Lakes closest to the Mississippi River and causing a massive flood to come down the mighty Mississippi that'd probably kill 2 or 3 million people. There is so many areas that this government has failed in. Whenever I'm talking about this government, I'm talking about the CIA. I'm talking about the Pentagon right now. They have failed to protect the American people, just like allowing for all these computers and the internet and all this artificial intelligence to basically invade our lives, that now is being weaponized against us. Kind of like the Trojan horse. I know that you've heard me say that before, that the Trojan horse, whenever, and which it's debatable whether or not that story is even true or not, of the country of Troy, but let's say that it was for a minute. Let's just use a hypothetical for a minute. They looked at that horse towards it being the greatest gift in the world. Oh, we'll just take it home with us and we'll hug on it and love on it and do whatever with it. And come to find out, that was the very thing that created their Achilles heel. Because they was not on top of their game in understanding that the enemy is not going to come to you in the form of a red, blazing, whatever, with two horns and a long tail and a pitchfork. Whenever Satan comes to you, he's going to come to you in a very, very disguised way. And he's going to try to use every format of trickery that he can upon to that individual. And it doesn't matter if it's a female against a male. It don't matter if it's a male against a female or vice versa, male on male and female on female. Or it doesn't matter if it's a rich versus the poor, or trying to keep everybody confined under their thumbnail. Satan is going to try to dress it up. He's going to try to use distorted, devious techniques in thinking that you're getting the best deal in the world, and the whole time, instead of you getting the best deal, you're actually getting the worst. These people have been studying us for the past 30 plus years. Whenever I talked about Obama a while ago and those diplomats that was ordered out of the United States, they had to leave the United States in less than 72 hours to give you any type of idea the seriousness of all this. Just like whenever my dad was in World War II, if you got caught sharing information with the enemy, that was looked upon as treason. And back then, they didn't play games. Their courts did not play games. And not only would you go to a place like Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, but they would probably line you up on a wall and literally shoot you, because now you was looked upon as being actually worse than the enemy, because now you're siding with the enemy. As I said a while ago, there's so many different Russians over here in America, and if Putin does not stop what he's doing towards grabbing up people and using them, I guess, for some sort of a leverage, then my suggestions would be for America to do the same thing. Once more, I don't wish for anybody to get harmed or hurt. I don't wish for nobody to have to go through any type of brutality that they don't have to go through, regardless whether it's a brutality that comes in the form of a natural catastrophe or a man-made catastrophe. I don't wish that upon nobody. But right now, we're dealing with stuff that we shouldn't be dealing with because the church world let God down pertaining to the windmill ministries that now we're having to do double time to make up for. We have sat idly by and we have let these people come in and study us, analyze us, look at all our hidden deep secrets towards what we got and what we don't got, and because of it, it has left us very, very vulnerable. Last night, I was in Walmart down in Dyersburg, and I talked to two individuals for a pretty long, lengthy time, and their concerns are the same as mine, is that we very well could be at the end of this thing. Now, I know that doesn't sound positive, but it's reality. And the reality is, whenever the Russians said what they said, even before Ronald Reagan's administration, that we will take the American people over and never fire a shot, that is exactly what they meant. And they're sneaky. And they're not to be trusted. Just like those people over there in the Middle East, you cannot blame the leader of Jerusalem, Israel, in doing what he is doing right now with Hamas, because Hamas has broke every violation, just like the Russian government right now is breaking every violation that you can think of, and they're coming out of the woodwork. It's not just an invasion with all the illegal immigrants. Right now, we got people coming from China that's trained military status over in the South California, that just within the past 3 or 4 days, they've apprehended about 500 or 600 people. Because they have found a break. They have found a breach. So they're coming over here by the groves. And it's not the fact that they're coming over here. A great deal of them are already here. They're looking for blood. They're wanting to take America down. Just like they want to take Israel, Jerusalem, down. They want to take any of God's soul people down. Don't you understand the people that's at attack right now? It's God's people, God's true chosen people that are under attack. And we have seen this rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall again and again and again. And now it's rising during the time of probably one of the worst times with all this high-tech stuff, internet, artificial intelligence, having our schools and universities filled full of people that we don't know what their true intent is. Yeah, they may be wanting to gain an education, and they may be very, very highly intelligent people, but really, what is their primary motive towards them being over here to begin with? Towards being in all these colleges and universities. We are reaching a climax time right now with Russia that really and truly, I don't think has ever been on this level. Even during the Cold War era, it was very, very high during that time, to the point that Russians was actually passing out cyanide pills to their citizens, thinking that any given time that the war was going to break out pertaining to nuclear armament. Is it possible that our American government should be stockpiling the very same thing pertaining to cyanide pills? Because I would rather die 1,000 deaths than to be under the command of either China or Russia. I'd rather die. And at least if I'm going to have to die, don't let me die under the hand of them towards being raped and brutally tortured. At least give me an opportunity. That way I can swallow a pill in 4 to 5 minutes. I can drop and hit the ground and I'm gone. This is serious of what we're going through right now. And what went on in my particular life during the 80s pertaining to the crown of thorns and me meeting this individual over in Martin, Tennessee on 3 different occasions pertaining to him being Arabic descent, Satan in the flesh. I cannot get any more serious than what that event took place, that the majority of the church world over here either snugged it off towards it being some sort of a joke, or they thought that it was some sort of a manipulation tactic in trying to get to them or take advantage of the public. And the whole time, I ain't asked for a dime. The only thing that I've ever asked for was a little bit of your time pertaining to listening to what I'm talking about. Just like whenever I was trying to help the people by giving out advisories towards electrical disturbances to come in 2005, whenever I sent a t-shirt pertaining to a bloody road ahead. These things are serious. You cannot get no more serious than you can pertaining to taking or having a human being's life taken. There is nothing above and beyond the seriousness of that I can think of. I don't care if you robbed Fort Knox. I don't care if you stole some of the most grandest art in the world. None of that compares to a human life. And for some reason, this message coming from the Windmill Ministries is not being distributed properly or not being accepted properly. But I guarantee you, coming near a neighborhood near you, it soon will. But my question is this: whenever it finally does, is it going to be a day late and a dollar short? In other words, at that point in time, I'm pretty sure I'll be dead and gone. So you won't have to worry about me standing in the corner, taking my thumb and putting it against my nose and saying 90-90 boo-boo. But what you do have to worry about is the affairs that's going to be falling up into your life, and up into your children's life, and up into your grandchildren's life, because people like me tried to warn you. We tried to help you. We was willing to sacrifice whatever it took to be able to get our message out there, and you didn't want to listen to it. You didn't want to support it. You didn't want to get in behind us. So whenever they talk about peace over here in America, to me, it's a joke. It's an absolute ranking, stinking, perverted joke. Whenever you talk about peace and just look at how dangerous that our streets have become just within the past 30 plus years. Like I said, whenever I was talking to these individuals last night over in Walmart, They was not frowning. They was not joking. They was not being giddy about the things that they was talking about. They was very, very serious. As a matter of fact, one of them kept talking about pertaining to a reporter that recently got fired that went over to Russia and done an interview with Putin that he talked about like that it's probably going to hit mainstream news just within a day or two pertaining to such of an uproar on the internet. And I looked at the guy, I said, the internet pertaining to all these gizmos and gadgets is one of the reasons why that we're going through what we're going through right now as far as high stress levels that we didn't have to worry about before the internet. Whenever the army was in control of the internet, that was fine and dandy. But whenever they released that out into the civilian life, that's what has caused so much chaos. I could go on and on and on. Once more, it goes back to the Trojan horse. They thought it was the most wonderfulest gift in the world until they actually went to bed, not realizing that whenever they brought it into their existences, there was about 100 people in there that was out to butcher them. And that's exactly what they done, because now the enemy had a better edge. They was blindsided by the enemy. They was caught unaware because they was not watching their P's and Q's. It's so sad. It is really, really so sad.
I mean, they requested him. You could have just handed him over. Probably saved yourself a lot of trouble.
First of all, I didn't have to hand him over. But second of all, I would have done that. We were talking, and then all of a sudden they raided Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, so again,
He did have to hand them over.
Who in the audience
And there was no
who in the audience is too stupid to believe that? I don't ask that being derogatory of anybody in the audience, because I don't think anybody in the audience is stupid enough to believe that. Because if
Well, we know the host knows.
and well, yeah, of course she knows. That's why she asked the question, because she knows, and so that's why she asked him. Well, why didn't you hand him over? I did it. And he said I was working with him. He kept lying to the FBI, Willie. We know this. I know you know that. He went to his own people who are now testifying against him and told them to destroy the evidence.
Flood the pool.
To flood all of that.
Oh, my
We
God.
know that. Trump knows that. Laura knows that, which is why
In other
she was
words,
asking
cook the
question.
books. In other words, cook the books. But this is the point that I'm trying to make right here. Trump was smart enough to identify that something had went wrong in America to put us in behind the 8 ball the way that it was. And because of it, I really think that Trump was willing to break the law or defy the natural occurrences based upon the significance of where we are right now. And once more, I truly don't think that either party, Republican or Democrat, are worthy of my vote, because they are the ones that has put us where we are right now. People need to recognize that. People need to recognize that and take these affairs serious on both accounts, regardless whether it's Republican or Democrat. But I truly think that Donald Trump probably had the right motive or the right thought in mind towards he know that something had terribly went wrong towards the American people being bamboozled, and he was willing to do whatever it took to try to get to the bottom of it. But they was going to stop him in his tracks. I don't know who it was talking about the they, but they never should have let those records get out of the White House to begin with like that.
Because he had every right to hold on to those documents. To what? Did you say what?
No, he did not, Willie, to your point. Those records belonged to the United States government. He was asked for them and didn't return them. He was subpoenaed for them and didn't return them. And so the FBI, working through the U.S. Attorney's Office, went to a federal judge and got a court-authorized search warrant permitting them to go to Mar-a-Lago and take the documents. And by the way, what did they find at Mar-a-Lago? Classified documents, which Mr. Trump said he didn't have. So to your other point, all of this information is out there. It's easy to find. You can read the search warrant affidavit. This was all done pursuant to law, the way it ought to be done.
So where is this case, Chuck? There's so much. I mean, just thinking the viewer out there trying to sort through, okay, we've got all this stuff happening in New York. There's the federal election interference case, which seems to be taking precedent. What about this documents case? Where are we in the process?
Well, there's still a trial date for this documents case in the Southern District of Florida for Judge Eileen Cannon. That's set for May. That could slide. Right now, they are holding hearings in Florida to figure out how to present classified information in a courtroom setting through something called the Classified Information Procedures Act. It's a mouthful, but it is a procedure so that information that's highly sensitive can be redacted.
Let's go forward here. We've already heard all this stuff. This is old news. We already know that basically the Bureau messed up. The Bureau, the people that's in control of the purse messed up. And because of it, we're all fixing to have to suffer the consequences on account of it.
By the way, in the interest of equal time, I should mention that President Biden also just released his own line of sneakers, and they're pretty...
See, it's just a con. One con right after another. Now you're going to try to raise money to pay off your bills with conning people into a bunch of tennis shoes that probably ain't worth the shoestrings that they was tied into. One con after another.
Africa and a recent
Back up.
Attribution. Haley growing emotional, speaking about her husband Michael, a National Guard officer deployed in Africa and a recent target of Mr. Trump's mockery.
What happened to her husband? Where is he? He's gone.
I wish Michael was here today. And I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't.
The former president on Fox News overnight attacking Haley.
She's down by 30, 35 points. And everybody knows her. You're not supposed to lose your home state. Shouldn't happen anyway. And she's losing it big. I mean, really, I said big lead. I don't think she knows how to get out, actually.
Both Haley and President Biden have assailed Mr. Trump for his refusal to condemn Vladimir Putin after the death of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny in Russian custody. The former president is again invoking Navalny's death to score political points, alluding to his own legal problems.
Even if you appeal, you got to put up escrow money. That's it's a lot of
It is
dough.
a form of Navalny. It is a form of communism or fascism. Navalny is a very sad situation. It's a horrible thing, but it's happening in our country too. We are turning into a communist country in many ways.
Asked whether he'd rather face Trump or Haley in the general election, President Biden brushing off the question.
Oh, I don't care.
NBC's Garrett Haake reporting. Joining the conversation, we have former MSNBC host and contributor to Washington Monthly, Chris Matthews, and White House correspondent for Politico and co-author of The Playbook, Eugene Daniels. Jonathan Lemire is back with us as well. He's White House bureau chief at Politico and the host of Way Too Early. Chris Matthews, my question to you is, should Nikki Haley stay in the game till the bitter end?
Yeah, I think as long as she can get money. I mean, money is the name of the game here. I think Ken Langone, the big Republican anti-Trumpers, I think are still available. The Chris Christie crowd. I think she might not do as well as she hoped to do this Saturday, though. I don't think she's going to do better than she did in New Hampshire. I think it's going to be tough. But I think she's probably going to get close to 40, which is fighting. I think she's fighting it right now, and I think she ought to stick in it. And I think she's the last non-Trump candidate standing.
Eugene Daniels, you were in South Carolina. Give us a sense of what you saw on the ground there.
Yeah, and I'm headed back tomorrow. You know, what you're seeing is that it is a completely different state than it was when Nikki Haley was the governor of that state, right? The Trumpism of the Republican Party is alive and well there, right? I'm driving around the community that my parents grew up in, and I'm seeing humongous Trump signs, not one Nikki Haley signs, and it shows his dominance there, right? And you talk to people who have worked for Nikki Haley, and as I have over the last last few weeks in South Carolina, they say that she is not a woman, and we've seen this, who is going to quit. That her tenacity is to the extreme, and more importantly for them, for some of those people who want to see her have a political future, that could also possibly be her downfall here. And thinking about what does it look like post 2024 for her in this Republican Party. And I think the hope that she is having, and that people in South Carolina who want to see her continue, whether they be voters or operatives, is that there needs to be some kind of opposition to Donald Trump. She keeps talking about this country not doing coronations, but also, and more importantly, they're hoping that something might happen, right? There's all these legal cases against Donald Trump. And so there's still a little bit of hope, a glimmer of hope that something may happen and he can't be the nominee, and that she wants to be that person who can pick up the ball if it's dropped.
So, Chris, it is at times to be surprised by something that Donald Trump says, but yet over the last couple of days, he basically compared himself to Alexei Navalny, not just because he has been persecuted, he believes, by the state. He suggests that, like Navalny, he is a sort of martyr for the cause, if you will, and he even went so far as to say so about the civil fraud verdict.
I want to go back to the statistics that I was talking about earlier. The question is, what states do most Russians live in? The United States. Fox River, Alaska, says 80.9%. Havana, Alaska, talking about Maryland, 19.3%. Eastern New York, 18.6%. Harlot Harbor, New York, 18.4%. East Hills, New York, 18%. And North Dakota, 17%. So the bottom line is this: we have many Russian immigrants here that, if they're going to continue to play this game of grabbing up innocent people, like I said, they grabbed up some girl just within the past 24 hours. Now they're falsely accusing her of being espionage. Two people can play that same game. Now, I'm not saying that that's what needs to be done, because once more, I'm not a war analyst, but this is very, very serious. And the fact of the matter is, last year, whenever we was celebrating, I think it was 9/11. I don't know where Biden was at the time, but he flew in from Alaska to be on American soil to make a statement. And one of the commentators asked him, "Mr. President, do you believe that we're safer today now than what we was before 9/11? And his response was, "Yes, I believe that." Well, look what has happened since the anniversary of September the 11th, just last year, with everything happening. So it's no doubt we are on a trajectory right now that does not look good for the world. And just like the individuals that I was talking to last night, it's almost as if we have set a sail towards being destined of a major third world war. And the thing about the Third World War, it may not be a Third World War. It may be the ending of all wars. It may be the ending of humanity.
And I just wish...
See, that's what they're not talking about pertaining to the Third World War. We think, oh, World War I, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, or this war, the Desert Storm War, World War II. We think, well, these are all confined wars. Well, they was during that time period, but everybody and their brother didn't have nukes. Didn't have atom bombs. If I'm not mistaken, Russia actually has more nukes than the United States. Now you tell me what was on their minds whenever they was building all them bombs. We'll take the American people over and never fire a shot.
Well, they're out there kissing the butt of Vladimir Putin. It's unbelievable. Not the ring, but the butt. They're really acting like this, and it's awful.
He's created a monster. in the Republican Party. It is the Russian Party at this point, at the rate it's going. And while we're at it, we're learning new details about Russian links to the FBI informant charged with lying to the agency about President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden during the 2020 presidential campaign. At a detention hearing in federal court in Las Vegas yesterday, prosecutors revealed in a filing that some of the false information that Alexander Smirnov fed to the FBI, including a story about Hunter Biden, came from officials associated with Russian intelligence. What's more, prosecutors allege the 43-year-old is, quote, actively peddling new lies that could impact U.S. elections after meeting with Russian intelligence officials in November. The judge did order Smirnov be released before trial under conditions that include GPS monitoring. Smirnov has been a key source for congressional Republicans and their impeachment inquiry into President Biden.
And we talked about this earlier. What's so remarkable is the Russians figured out that they didn't have to pass their disinformation through intel agencies or get through any ciphers. They figured out with Comer's committee. I mean, here's a committee. They will take anybody. They'll take international fugitives to lie about Biden, which they did. They took an international fugitive to lie about Joe and Hunter Biden. And then we find out, where is he? Well, he's an international fugitive. He's on the run because, he's helping the communist Chinese. He's funneling Iranian oil to the communist Chinese. He's illegally trading arms. And now you have somebody who got caught lying, spreading Russian disinformation, and again, going straight from Putin's propaganda machine right to Comer. And Comer takes it without questioning. That tells you how sick the attitude is there, where they actually hate Democratic opponents more than they hate Vladimir Putin. Which again, the fact that the House Republican Party has gotten to that point.
Yeah, it's rare as the Russians.
Is
unbelievably useful idiot, Comer. Joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, are we hearing anything new from House Republicans who had used Smirnov's lies to fuel their impeachment inquiry into President Biden?
Mika, at this point, it doesn't appear in any way, shape, or form to have slowed down the Republican effort to try and impeach President Joe Biden. In fact, in the next hour or so, they're going to hear from his brother, James Biden, as they try and continue to find this elusive evidence that connects either his brother's business dealings or his son's business dealings directly to Joe Biden as a public official, and that he used his power as a public official to help influence these business dealings. But to put into context how important this indictment is of Alexander Smirnov and how it fits into the overall narrative that Republicans have been peddling for the past 6 months, I was outside the SCIF, the secure location here on Capitol Hill, where after a very controversial set of decision making by the Republican impeachment managers, they decided to make that FBI tip sheet, that document that alleged that there was a source who knew that Joe Biden was being bribed in his role as a public official to help Hunter Biden's business dealings. They made that sheet, that tip sheet, available for members of Congress to review. Now, this was something the FBI was very much opposed to. They view these FBI tip sheets as basically just one piece of an investigation. They're never.
What's more, you're talking about the Bureau. You're talking about the committees here.
Specific pieces of evidence, and the claims that are made on these tip sheets need to have backup associated with them. But one by one, these Republican members left that SCIF and came to our cameras and told us that this was the smoking gun that they've been looking for, that this was enough to begin the process of impeaching the president. There were some that called for articles of impeachment to be drawn up that day. And at that time, Democrats and justice officials and legal experts outside of government warned us over and over again that these tip sheets cannot be used as specific pieces of evidence. And here now we have the special prosecutor, David Weiss, who's a Trump appointee, whose mission right now is to convict Hunter Biden, the president's son, who has determined that this tip sheet is not only not solid evidence, but is actually could be part of a Russian scheme to spread disinformation in this country, it really just pulls from the bottom of the foundation by which Republicans have really built this claim about connections between the Hunter Biden business dealings and Joe Biden himself, and then whatever other nefarious actors that they've claimed. So, they're going to bring James Biden in today. They have Hunter Biden here next week. Wow. They're going to try and get them to claim something that they've been looking for. But at this point, as we've said a million times, the hard evidence just isn't there, yet the impeachment process continues.
We're basically setting ducks because we have entrusted so many people in so many different areas. We're basically setting ducks.
Being weaponized. I mean, it continues down a path, which is why when the special prosecutor came out with their colorful report on President Joe Biden and the documents, he came to the conclusion that it did not need to go forward. Right. Correct? Right. That's all you need. But reading his details, it was all meant to sort of trigger people to say, oh, the special prosecutors are not good. Oh, it's the Justice Department. They're trying to sort of muddle everything. The bottom line is this Smirnoff guy has been completely undermined. End of story. Well, there's no weaponization of the Justice Department here at play.
No, I know. Hey, NBC's Ryan Nobles, thank you so much. And what we learned, again, from, as Ryan said, from...
Whenever it gets to the point that the American people don't know who to trust or what to trust, we are in a very, very dangerous position that just about any and everything could occur. And that's basically where we are right now, towards seeing all these red lights going off and on. That, yes, even the Pentagon was addressing during the last presidential election.
News town hall, Trump essentially admitted to killing the bipartisan border security bill in Congress because it would have, quote, made it much better for the opposing side. Biden.
Why were you against the House, against the Senate border deal, the bipartisan border
Well, they
deal?
allow 5,000 people a week. Number one, that, but it also made it much better for the opposing side. I don't know if you've heard this, but I came up with this one. Migrant crime. There's violent crime, there's migrant crime. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's going to be worse than any other form of crime.
Yeah, actually, that's so many things about that are wrong. So many things about that are lie.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Look at the incidences that's already happening all over the country pertaining to these illegal immigrants.
Migrant crime worse than all other crimes. One stat after another just says that's not true. Of course, there's individual examples, terrible examples like we saw in New York. But overall, if facts matter, if numbers matter, if data
they ain't got opened up yet. They're not full force yet. Give them another few more days or weeks or months.
Migrants, that's a lie. But Chris Matthews, I just want to zero in because you worked in the House, and it's just extraordinary that you actually have President of the United States.
Let's go forward right here. I've heard this guy before, and I'm not really all that motivated around him. Let's go forward here. Let's go forward.
Background to try to create a more diverse student body. And that's important because less than a year ago, the Supreme Court essentially knocked out race-conscious admissions policies in the Harvard case nationwide. And that's really put a lot of things up in the air. Colleges and secondary schools are trying to figure out how they can achieve diversity without taking race into account. And this case sort of lays out some markers about how you can do that.
Right, and they focused on, said we're not looking at race, we're looking at socioeconomic factors, we're looking at...
But yet now Nashville, Tennessee will allow for a parade of Nazi sympathizers to march up and down the streets up here in Nashville, Tennessee this past week, hollering all kinds of anti-slogan remarks about the Jews, the blacks, and anybody else that don't think like them and don't accept their ideology. I'm telling you, there's too many signals being broadcasted in this country right now from A to Z, either on a federal level, state level, local level, civilian level, professional level, and because of it, it's turning it into, I don't even know the proper word of using other than anarchy. It's turning it into danger. And a lot of us is seeing this, just like the individuals that I was talking to last night in Walmart. This is bad. This is not good. This is bad. Whenever you have this type of division, what did Christ say about the house? He said that a divided house will not stand. That's where the cliche come from that I think Kennedy originally brought up, that united we stand, divided we fall. Maybe wrong about it not being Kennedy at first that made that remark. But united we stand, divided we fall. This is a precipice that has been chiseled in stone ever since probably the first Roman War. United we stand, divided we fall. And right now, we are so divided to the point that we're basically working both ends against the middle towards basically there is no other alternative other than to fall because we're too divided. We're fighting against one another. We're fighting against ourselves. We're fighting against our allies. Our allies are fighting against us.
But again, it does seem that the Supreme Court right now is basically saying, don't say it, just do it, and do it in a way that's subtle. Ken, before we let you go really quickly, I'm just curious, what are you looking at in the coming weeks, months, over the horizon? What should we be looking? What should we know about what the Supreme Court's deliberating over right now?
Well, you got a really important gun case that we may or may not see today. The question of whether a person who is convicted of domestic violence can be prohibited from possessing a firearm. And that's important because in the Bruen case, as you recall, the Supreme Court sort of said that all gun regulation has to have an analog in history. It has to be something the founders would have understood and recognized. And so that's got courts around the country in confusion about which gun laws are still appropriate, including can a felon possess a firearm. In this case, it's about someone convicted of domestic violence. It seemed that the justices were prepared to allow that to remain in place. They all seem to suggest that somebody convicted of domestic violence is a dangerous person that shouldn't have a firearm. But if it doesn't go that way, it would be a hugely significant blow to gun regulations because thousands and thousands of people each year are prevented from buying a gun because of a domestic violence conviction.
NBC's Ken Delanian reporting for us from outside the Supreme Court. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Control of Wisconsin's legislature has now become more competitive after years of Republican domination. On Monday, Democratic Governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, signed into law new legislative maps that could drastically alter the state's balance of power, which has been under Republican control for more than a decade. Democrats hailed the signing as a huge victory in the swing state after spending years fighting to overturn Republican-drawn maps. The new maps will replace the ones that were widely seen as the most gerrymandered in the nation. The tide turned when liberal Justice Janet Protasiewicz joined the state's Supreme Court last year. A day after she was sworn in, progressive groups filed a lawsuit challenging the map, with Protasiewicz arguing they were rigged. Under the new maps, which will be used during the November election, Democrats are likely to gain seats.
In other words, they was tainted. Saying one thing, but in reality being something else. Putting out once more, too many signals, too many images, false images, information warfare. That's what we're in right now. We're in information warfare. It's really become scary. That's what the individual was telling me last night, that we're beyond just being crucial, or it being being to our surprise. It's become very crucial.
its way onto the film set and into a prop gun.
I don't know nothing. I've heard all this about somebody shooting somebody. I don't see how in the world that could ever happen either, without it being an intended intent. Don't know. I'm not the jury. I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury, and I'm not the executioner. I just know this. I know who is, and his name is Satan, the Luciferian Lucifer that's out to kill us all. And if we don't watch, we're going to fall right into his hand.
Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, as well as author of the new book, Tell Me When It's Over, an insider's guide to deciphering COVID myths and navigating our post-pandemic world.
See, my son sent me a link yesterday or day before yesterday telling me about some sort of propaganda that he picked up on that he wanted me to watch. I tried to link on to it, and I guess it was promoted in Twitter. He could have probably went over to another engine and sent it to me that way, because I refuse to get on anything other than what I'm already on for right now. I don't want to be on Angie's List. I don't want to be on Twitter. I don't want to be on some of these other well-known, versed engines. If other people want to get on, that's fine. But I texted him back and I said, look, there is 1,000,000 to 1 different theories and ideals about COVID, either pre-COVID or during COVID, and the repercussions of each and every person is different. We know that, because that's the reason why they say, well, we're practicing medicine. They're basically using the American lobotomy for an experiment. And there's probably going to be some people that's going to react in a negative way, while hopefully the majority of the people react in a positive way. I can't, I'm not a doctor. I don't get into all that stuff, microscopic germ warfare and all this other stuff. But it all leads back to what? Information warfare. What was the discussion that I had last night with 2 individuals? The internet, social media, artificial intelligence is what is driving this. I was talking to one of my old bosses 2 days ago over in Paris, Tennessee, Jimmy Atkins. And we got to talking about something, I don't know what it was now, but he brought up the fact of using the weather as an illustration. He said back in the day when we was growing up, the weatherman would say, well, it's going to rain today. And if it rained, that was fine. And if it didn't, that was fine too. And if the weatherman missed it by saying, well, the sun's going to be shining today, and the sun didn't shine and it rained anyway, well, we just took it like a duck rolling off its back. And let's say that there did come an ice storm or whatever, and electricity went out. We compromised and sat around the fire and waited till electricity come back on. We didn't hype everything up like they do today. The media, all these other different programs out there, it's kind of like, I'm going to use this for an illustration. Sometimes we would do something that was right at the point of need to be disciplined for, about the time that the school bus was pulling up. And our father would say, you wait. Whenever you get off that bus, you're mine. And the consequences of thinking about the whipping was actually worse than the whipping. And I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody or not, but it's kind of like what we're dealing with today with all this high-tech media and social media and all this other kind of media stuff. It's hyped everything up. It's made it worse than what it is, or it's a distraction to the point that we're concentrating on one thing whenever we should be concentrating on something else.
Dr. Offit, so good to see you this morning. Congratulations on the book. Let's start right there. Your analysis on these potential shift in CDC guidelines, and just larger, what that tells us about where we are and our ongoing struggle with COVID.
I think the CDC made the right move. The infection works in 2 parts. The first part,
virus replication, the virus reproducing itself, is key. And the second part is when your immune response takes over. When your immune response takes over, virus replication decreases. And as your immune response increases, it's your immune response that causes the symptoms. So their argument that if you've had one day of not having fever, what that tells you is that your immune response is abating, it's lessening, and therefore you're much less likely to shed virus. So I think it makes more sense to do that, to sort of tag it to the individual symptoms rather than to just pick an arbitrary length of time, like 5 days, 10 days, 7 days, 14 days, because that just sort of tags things to the metric system or the lunar month, which makes little sense. So I think this sort of makes it more individual for the sufferer, and that makes more sense.
You know, Doctor, a lot of people who have been, whether they've been anti-vaccine or just wanted to keep their heads in the sand and attack anybody that talked about COVID being more than a flu, have looked at all the things that have happened, all the changes and recommendations that have been made since the outbreak of COVID, and say, see, they have no idea what they're doing. Of course, it's an active virus unlike any that we've seen. So tell me, looking 3.5 years back, what have we learned?
Right. So I think, frankly, this was an amazing story in two ways. First of all, you have this unusual virus. It has unusual clinical characteristics, unusual biological characteristics. We isolated and sequenced that virus in January of 2020. 11 months later, we'd done 2 large clinical trials using a technology that had never been used to make a vaccine before. That was a remarkably effective vaccine. And then within the next 7 months or so, we vaccinated 70% of the United States population. Again, an amazing accomplishment. I really do think as a medical or scientific achievement, it was the greatest thing in my lifetime. And my lifetime includes the development of a polio vaccine. Then, as you know, we hit a wall. 30% of the U.S. population simply refused to be vaccinated. They believed that the vaccine was dangerous. They didn't think that the disease was that bad. And as a consequence, 300,000 people unnecessarily lost their lives. Why? I mean, how did we lose trust of the public, lose trust in the FDA or the CDC, and how can we get it back?
Yeah. Let me ask you about the origin of the virus. I've talked to a lot of different people who, originally said, there's no way it started in a lab. It started here, there. There still seems to be some question about that with even medical professionals I talk to quietly, who are still suggesting that maybe it did start in the lab, because this is unlike any virus. It seems to morph. It used to be, you could get a SARS vaccine and the smart cells would work, up to a decade or so. We learned with this virus that you need to get vaccinated and boosted regularly, because this vaccine is always learning, always morphing, always causing new challenges.
Right. This was not a lab leak. I don't think this is a scientific controversy. I mean, you have the SARS-1, for example, it raised its head in 2002. That was a lab leak. That was an animal-to-human spillover event that occurred in China. MERS is sort of the next coronavirus, also an animal-to-human spillover event. All the early cases centered in the western section of the Hunan wholesale seafood market. I mean, when you looked at the genetic analysis of that one particular area where there were dozens of species that were sold illegally that could then catch and transmit SARS-CoV-2 to humans, all the genetic evidence was there that SARS-CoV-2 was there. So it is remarkable to me that 2/3 of the American public still believes that this could be a lab leak when all the scientific evidence shows the opposite is true. And also remember, there has never been a virus that was created in a laboratory that caused a pandemic. So as Carl Sagan says, extraordinary claims should be backed by extraordinary evidence. This is an extraordinary claim that's backed by no evidence.
Well, Dr. Paul Offit, I have actually been waiting I've been waiting for this book to be written, where somebody takes a look back and asks what.
But at the same time, if you know anything at all about the Bible, King James Version Bible, Jesus said that in the last days that wars, rumors of wars, commotions, earthquakes in diverse places, and I could go down the list of how that Christ said to properly prepare yourself, that way you are not caught unaware, of these occurrences that's going to take place in the final remaining last days. You have to be alert, and you can't allow for yourself to be overwhelmed because of the dramatizing that's going on with artificial intelligence right now towards all this stuff of information warfare and chemical biological warfare. I don't know. There could be somebody right down the road that's trying to engineer something, and you may think, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh no, trust me, you have chemists that's among us that we don't even know that's ever been registered as chemists, because there's a lot of them out there creating stuff that's killing themselves over. Look at all the meth labs. Look at all the people that all of a sudden decided to be chemists and making a bunch of drugs that was going to keep them up day and night. So don't say that it ain't out there. Don't say that your Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde isn't out there, because they are. They are. You got people, I'll put it this way. They caught a pharmacist, I think it was in southern Illinois, a few years ago. They started noticing that everybody was dying that was going through cancer radiation treatment. And come to find out, this stuff is so expensive that the pharmacist himself was stealing half of their prescription. In other words, if the doctor prescribed for them to have this amount and this, and to take this amount of whatever you call it for this length of time, he was basically cutting in half. And the way that he was cutting in half, he was mixing it with something, but he was taking the pure stuff and holding it back. And the only reason why that he really got caught, other than the fact that there were so many people dying that shouldn't have been dying, was that his bank account basically blowed the whistle on himself. You know, even though a pharmacist makes good money ordinarily, he was making like 10 times more money putting stuff in it back in the bank that he shouldn't have been. And that was basically what gave him away, was all the money. And you'll be surprised whenever you're a true detective in how many leads that you would take that way towards looking at everything, not just part of everything, but looking at everything towards, well, where is there a red flag at here towards who is possibly doing this? And sometimes it takes weeks, months, sometimes it takes years before they finally run it down towards what actually occurred during the time that it occurred. But I'm just telling you, that guy was smart enough in the pharmacist community that he was taking a certain portion of it, holding it back, and basically using it for his own profit. I think I don't know for sure that they ever had court on that guy towards putting him away, but I'm pretty sure that he'll be put away for life, if not executed. It's crazy in what we're dealing with today in comparison to what our ancestors had to deal with even no more than, let's say, 50 years ago, much less 100 years ago, much less 200 years ago. We are dealing with things today that was unlike anything imaginable. You know, they didn't have running water during Jesus' era. They didn't have electricity during Jesus' era. They didn't have all these biological chemicals and these doctors and these prescriptions and all this other stuff back then. They didn't know how to do what they're doing today. We're dealing with a time to where you can take something and put it in a microwave and disturb all the molecules and the atoms to the point that within 30 seconds, pull it out and it's boiling, depending on what kind of microwave you got. But it's unbelievable of the things that are happening right now that are keeping us divided rather than keeping us united.
What have we learned? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? And what can we do better in the future? You've written the book. I can't wait to read it. The new book is titled Tell Me When It's Over, An Insider's Guide to Deciphering COVID Myths and Navigating Our Post-Pandemic World. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, and that does it for us this morning. Thank you for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. MSNBC is going to have coverage of today's expected Supreme Court decisions in 2 minutes.
You know, because of time relay, I think I'm going to just listen to this right here real quick, and then I'm gonna end it.
President Donald Trump whether Colorado has the power to remove the 2024 Republican frontrunner from the primary ballot because of his efforts to overturn the last election. States like Maine, they are closely watching this one, as that state also booted Trump from the ballot. And a second issue as well, still on the justice's plate to decide anytime, Trump's request to stop the election interference case against him in Washington, hoping the justices will agree to decide whether he's immune from criminal prosecution. Want to bring in from outside the Supreme Court.
All right, they don't have a ruling just yet. Let's go forward here, and maybe they can. Or maybe this is just a way of dragging it out towards once more adding suspense. I tell you what, the bull that people have to put up with and watching and listening to all this stuff, it's no longer cut and dry like it used to be. And a lot of that got to do with so many people that's not doing their jobs accurately and professionally. I may have skipped over it pertaining to the ruling. They're basically just repeat itself in the news, and they'll just put a little different twist to it based upon the knowledge and what they know and what they don't know. Just repeats itself again and again and again. Some of it they take away, some of it they add to.
Going towards Ukraine to talk more about this. You have new sanctions here, Richard. You have another American now held in Russian custody. More pressure on the U.S. to aid Ukraine as well. Have we reached an inflection point with U.S. and Russia relations?
Well, inflection point would suggest that it is about to change or could go to a new place. I'm not sure that it is, but we've certainly seen much more tension right now. You mentioned this case of the latest dual national who was picked up in Russia, Ksenia. She is accused of treason. She faces a potentially long prison term. She was brought into.
See what I'm saying? I want to end this right now. All these affairs. I just pray to God that He will be with us towards leading us not into temptation, but delivering us from this evil. Holy Eternal God, I know that You know what we're dealing with down here, just as Your scriptures has already done, foreseen, foretold, predicted, that in the last days that Satan would come down in great wrath upon to the world. I just pray, God, for Your enlightenment, pray, God, for Your wisdom and Your knowledge to be distributed to those that will be most effective in Your glory for the lives of the innocent upon to the planet. And that You, O Lord, will take charge on a spiritual level in basically confining these evil, demonic, wicked spirits that are causing so much harm and hurt and havoc upon a society. Lord, I don't have a crystal ball. You haven't given me the ability to be able to look every day towards what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, how significant that is going to be whenever it does happen. The only thing that I know is the interpretations out of the Bible that You have given us for a roadmap in what to expect in these final remaining last days. I pray, God, for those who have never had a true relationship with the Lord, with You, God, that they'll do so before it's too late. because there is no promises of tomorrow, not only on a big scale, but also on a little scale. And I just pray, God, that you would take control of these matters to the degree that we will see a revival and that we will see a utopia, even though it may be a temporary utopia before the opening of the Red Horseman, the second seal, that we will in fact see your will be done. Pray, God, that you will lead us, O Lord, not into temptation, but that you will deliver us from this evil. For thine will, we pray, will be done. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to throw this at us. The other night, I was outside and I heard a car coming, and I looked up and I seen this automobile. It was a truck pulling a U-Haul trailer, and it drove completely around the block, and it got back on the highway and left. I don't know which way it got whenever it got up there because I can't see. But, you know, me sticking my neck out in doing what I'm doing, it is so dangerous right now that I don't know what to expect from 1 second to 1 minute to 1 hour to 1 day to another. I mean, I have stirred up some animosity feelings pertaining to me investigating what went on in Waco, Texas, what went on in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, other areas that I've went into and basically deciphered different things going on. In addition to the domestic uncertainties that has happened right here in Northwest Tennessee of the people that I don't know to trust. And it's not that they should not trust me, but it's the other way around, me not trusting them, including the law here in Weakley County, including the judges, including the magistrates, including the prosecuting attorneys, including the courts. But then on the other hand, not only do I have to worry about that, but then whenever I voice my opinion, regardless whether I voice my opinion about the Middle Eastern war, or voice my opinion about the Korean war, or voice my opinion about what's going on with Ukrainians pertaining to the Russians, with the Russian government, I am constantly sticking my neck out on the limb of not knowing from 1 day to 1 second to 1 minute to 1 hour what I may have to face towards trouble coming to me rather than me coming to it. And that's exactly what happened. Whenever I moved back here in 2014, I had no idea that every demon from hell was going to wind up right here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. But it did. But it did. But I can also say that you failed. They have failed in their attempts towards stopping the will of the Heavenly Father. They have failed in stopping their attempts towards me not fulfilling that in which what I have been called of God to do pertaining to my destiny. They have failed. Now, for them to acknowledge that is one thing, and now for them to admit to their acknowledgement of that is something else even beyond that. So, as we're still in this stalemate, I wanted to let my viewers know that the dangers have only increased pertaining to the stakes being that much higher. And if I was relying solely upon my own sources of protecting me and taking care of me, I would already be dead. I would already be dead. But because I'm not relying upon my own physical abilities of protecting me, I know that my Lord and my Savior, my God, will protect me. Even if He has to nudge me in my sleep and tell me, hey, there's something going on, you better do this, or you better do that, or you better sneak out this way, or you better get a club, or you better do that, or do this. I rely solely upon the Holy Spirit. And I would strongly suggest for any true born-again Christian to do the same. Because it doesn't matter if you're a president that we've seen now assassinated here in America several different times. It doesn't matter if you're a senator, pretend what happened to the person in Arizona, or up at the White House pertaining to the madman. It doesn't matter if you're the smallest of the small to the largest of the large, the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor. Right now, we are going through the eye of the storm that, as I make these programs and put them out there pertaining to public domain, you have an opportunity of listening to me, but then you have an opportunity of responding to what you listen to. And from what I can tell, from all indications, right here in Northwest Tennessee, where I live presently, I have not seen no positive effect. I have not gotten a slew of mail or cards from various churches or church members. I have not gotten a slew of emails or electronic signals coming to my phone, which leads me to believe that the trajectory that we're on towards being divided rather than being united is still at hand. So rather than us easing out of the eye of the storm, we're still drastically, sadly, going into it. That's the reason why whenever I bump into people, like at Walmart last night, they look at me and say, we could be at the end of this thing. This could be our very end. And these men that I was talking to was extremely serious about what that they were saying, and neither one that I know of knew each other, because I talked to them individually, one on one side of the store and the other on the other side of the store. But yet, no, they had the same thought patterns. They had the same worries. They had the same conscience meaning of what they was talking about, of it basically being equal. I just pray that the message coming from the messenger, which is myself, will be taken on the level that it needs to be taken. Like I said, whenever, any time you step out into the eyes of the general public, it doesn't matter if you're running to be a dog catcher. You're running upon to an entity that, as far as I'm concerned, is more dangerous than going into the most lethal forest or jungle that you can think of. You know, whenever you're in a jungle, you look for different things that's going to be coming out of the blue that could possibly be harming you, regardless whether it comes in the form of a snake or whatever. Whenever you're out here in this field, in the human field, you don't know in what form, you don't know in what fashion, you don't know whether or not it's going to be somebody that you thought that you could trust that now are portraying you. It is more crucial today in staying on top of your game towards allowing for the Holy Spirit to guide you and direct you and give you the insight, because I promise you, if I was relying upon my own sources of my own means, I wouldn't be able to take it. And I darn sure wouldn't be able to lay my head down at night and have a decent night's sleep, even going through a major operation on my left ankle that I recently had just within the past month. I want to thank my viewers for your prayers. I realize that there's probably lots of people out there that are sympathetic to my messages that I put out. I realize that they're probably frightened for whatever reason towards not wanting to group up, partner up, or get in behind the windmill ministries, knowing of how that this government has tried to destroy its own people. But by this government trying to destroy its own people, it's basically bringing destruction to itself. Because you cannot maintain a trajectory of spending basically $5 trillion and only getting back 3 and think that we're going to be able to be a self-sustaining country for very much longer. Because there's going to be all kinds of hardships that's going to be coming down the road, regardless whether it be man-made hardships or the hardships of basically the forces of nature, because now we have messed with the forces of nature and what we're doing not only to the inside of the planet, but also the out. So if there's ever been a time that you needed to be prayed up, packed up, and ready to go up, I cannot emphasize on how important it is right now for anybody, everybody, to have a personal relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your prayers. I want to say God bless America, God bless our troops, and God bless our endeavors towards where we go from this moment on in not only our domestic affairs, but also the global ones as well. Thank you for your time, and shalom.